Hello, everyone. I have a special guest with me today who is a once a Marine, always a Marine, which we can talk about later. He is the president of Fuhsion Marketing. He is a co-host of the Tim and Jim show. He is also co-host or host, one of the two, of the Launch Your Live podcast. And I'm reading all this because I'm making sure I don't forget everything. And an all-round marketing / strategic, surgical, and precise guru. So I give you Jim. Welcome to the show. Quicc Gains welcomes you warmly. How's it going?
Great. Thanks for having me, Dan. It's exciting to be here with you. I know it's been a few months since we got to actually see each other, see people in general. So I think I like to joke that sometimes I think that was one of the last conferences in America, social media marketing world, and
I think it actually
it's
wasn't it?
well, there was a podcast one the week after, but I think it was definitely close to as far as ones that people really know a lot about, I would definitely say,
Does the
yeah.
podcast one count?
Well, I didn't go, so no, we won't count it now.
No, it won't count. So, I mean, we just to recap everyone who is joining us here today and everyone who's catching on the replay as well. Jim is an interesting fellow. And I say that term because I'm from the UK and I can use random colloquialisms in the right phrase. Now, and I'll be honest here, I did a little boo-boo when I scheduled all these events in these lives. Now, I put down former United States Marine, and Jim straight away pretty much messaged me and said, technically, once a Marine, always a Marine. You might want to change that to retired or just remove the former. And I thought, oh, oops. So I quickly went around and removed that. So tell me, Jim, the pride that goes with being a Marine and once a Marine, almost a Marine, how does that feel?
Well, I tell you, in fact, it was funny. July the 13th of this month marked 36 years from when I went to boot camp on Friday the 13th of July, 1984. So I
Lucky day.
retired in August of 2009. So it's almost been 11 years. So, it's 25 years of my life. So definitely something that is ingrained in you. And so, even as I worked with Angus Nelson earlier this year, from a coaching perspective, one of the struggles I had is the Marine Corps is a part of my ethos and my fiber, and so that's why I now do marketing the Marine Corps way, right? It's like, why try to hide it? It's a part of me, right? It's a part of how I do things. It's the Marines, we're famous for being to adapt and overcome. We always do more with less. I mean, that's just that pride you take. It's a team. We like to say we're only as fast as the slowest person. Even the leadership style, we're always training those under us to move up to the next step. And it's really, you don't always think about it, but and you could even, and that's where it applies to business, right? If you're the vice president of something, you're looking to move up, but what if you move out? Well, someone's got to be ready to take your step into your spot. So that happens in combat. That happens just from people transferring jobs, going to different locations. So that whole idea of team building is kind of inherent in what we do as Marines, and I think it applies in the business world as well. So that's something that I've always uh, enjoyed, and you know, still very tight with some of my friends from my Marine Corps days. It's as I like to say, uh, and it's the truth, is some of the greatest Americans that I've ever met are United States Marines, and I wouldn't have met them if I had not become a part of that organization. And that's just like your Royal, British Royal Marines. We have a lot of respect for them. But yeah, so we like to say that we're the best, and we're not ashamed to say so.
I actually, funny enough, know a few who would like to discuss that over drinks, I think is the term.
Yes.
So I mean, that's one of the things I really wanted to dig into with you. I mean, especially, current climate as it is. I'm not going to come out with any of those kind of,
Yes.
unprecedented times style phrases that have been way overdone. But especially at times as they are now, it's really, really interesting for me when I speak to former service people about how life is right now. Because I mean, you guys have a very different take on it. And I mean, I'll give you an example, and I'd love to hear your input on this. Is I actually work with a mindset person for my own, both myself individually, but also growing my own business and consultancies and working with Quicc and everything else. I mean, the whole thing. And she is a former Royal Navy officer turned mindset guru, and I actually had a conversation with her where I was just trying to figure all this stuff out, especially like earlier on a couple of months ago. And I was like, is being in lockdown kind of what it feels like to be on ship for months on end, the isolation, that kind of thing? And she said, the fact that you're asking that question means that you don't understand what it's like to be in the forces, because she goes, being out on ship is the best time of her life. It's not isolation. It's you're surrounded by the camaraderie of this is how she was explaining it. You're surrounded by the camaraderie in your team, and there's this like huge sense of belonging on a small boat. And it could be 3 months, it could be a year. It doesn't matter. If anything, she's sad when they end. And I really would be interested to see your take on that.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a couple times that I deployed, back, I'll just say many years ago, and yeah, that was the thing, right? You're surrounded by it's like it's what we train for. We train to be involved in these moments and to get to actually put our skills to work. Yeah, you love it, and you do hate to see it end at times, but then again, a lot of us have families, so and I think that sometimes that becomes the struggle, right? The struggle of balancing family and work, right? Because you don't want to let your fellow Marines down, and so I think that can be the challenge. But where I think that helps now is like, okay, I can be very focused. I know what I got to get done, and I think that if anything, if you want to call it like those times of being away, whether it's 6 months or a year, if you put your mindset like this is no different than a deployment, right? We have some different things involved, that this is going to end. And so I have this opportunity. Like, what's funny is I would say probably the best shape I was ever in, at least in my 30s, when I was deployed to the Middle East, because I could work out 2 or 3 times a day, right? Because I didn't have to worry about all these other things like, putting kids to bed and things of that nature. And I appreciated the support I had back home for that. But I think on the flip side, this is that same opportunity. Like, okay, I can't go to all these meetings and go meet people in person. So what am I going to do with my time? I'm going to take this time to sharpen the saw, right? I'm going to work on those skills that I've been making excuses that I didn't have time for. And because I can kind of like put that switch on, like, okay, I got to be, focused on getting this done. Now I don't have those excuses because it's like it's kind of like you're on a ship, right? Where are you going to go? It's like the USS House, right? You're stuck in your house. Your house is your boat. Just might not be a houseboat in the water. There are some people that have it, and so I think that's where I think that mindset of being in the military, especially for those people that have been deployed, even more so understand like, okay, we've got a mission. So you kind of put that in the mindset of, this is a mission to take my business to the next level during this time, as opposed to, putting it off until tomorrow. And I think that goes back to what you're talking about with mindset.
It does take a huge, huge shift. I mean, just while we've been talking, um, Mitch Jackson, hello, good morning.
Yes. Good morning, Mitch. He's up
And
early.
what part of the US is he on? Is he
He's on the West
early?
Coast. So it's I guess it's eight in the morning there. So
Oh, yes. See, that's love for you. And George, I believe George is a
a
former
Coast
Coast
Guard.
Guard.
Yes.
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 That should be some interesting conversations for you two, I'm sure. I mean, who's
Yes.
better between the Marines and the Coast Guard? Should we go there?
We don't need to go there, but we appreciate everything the Coast Guard does to keep our
Oh,
shores safe.
isn't that cute?
There you go.
Well, he said he'll drive the ship for you. So,
Yes, yes. Yeah, George is always funny. He always cracks me up. He calls me the colonel of social media.
and yes, George, I am British, technically. So, born and raised in a county called Buckinghamshire, if you really wanted to know. So, I am a country boy who then moved to the big city and then realized raising a family in the big city is not necessarily a great idea. And I'm now looking to move out of the city to the country again, where it's safer for my kids.
Well, and it's been interesting. My wife and I have been watching a lot of these. Like our evening routine is somewhat like doing a little binge watching. So we've been watching Vikings on Hulu, and we watched The Last Kingdom on Netflix. So you get a lot of this. We don't know how much of it's true. I probably should ask, my British friends like you, like how much of there seems like there's some historical, uh, you know, tie-in to things that happened between Britain and the Vikings, and so it's always interesting to see because like, oh, that really makes me want to visit even more. Like the latest episode we watched of Vikings, right? The Vikings like took over York, and then they abandoned it and went back to Viking land, and there's this character right now, this Alfred guy that may become king, and I think there was a King Alfred at some point in British history. So I don't know how much of it's true, but
I think
it's
it is.
interesting.
I mean, the UK history is. I mean, I by no means am I a history boffin at all, but it was a very, very mixed time in the UK. Like very. I mean, I do remember going to. I used to work supporting my first ever IT manager role. Actually, was working for a company that was based in a town called St Albans. And technically, St Albans is a city because there's a cathedral there, but it's like a tiny, tiny city. It's probably like the smallest city in the whole of the UK. The only reason it's got a city status is there's a cathedral there.
Right.
But I didn't realize, but the cathedral. This gives you an idea about how long and far back and how kind of convoluted it all gets. Cathedral was actually, if you go back, over 1,000 years, it's it was built upon raised land that was formerly a pagan ritual site.
Mm-hmm.
So it was pagan, and then it was whatever was before that. There was suicides. There was cutting out of hearts and all sorts of weird stuff went on there. There was witchcraft
Right.
things went on there, and then they took over that land. I think consecrated it as a term.
Oh
Built
yeah.
a chapel and then a church and then a cathedral and everything else. So actually,
Right.
technically speaking, cathedrals even are built upon pagan history of 1,000, if not more, years before it.
Yeah.
And
Well, and
lots and lots of numbers.
it was funny because even in one part, because the main character, at least for the first few seasons, is this Ragnar Lothbrok,
Mhm.
and he they went and they invade Paris, and I'm like, is this really true? So I actually Googled it, and they did. So it's
Mhm.
like, wow, there's a lot more history. It's like I had not realized, right? So learning a little history that the Vikings actually sacked Paris in like 840-ish, uh, AD. It's like, wow, this is pretty interesting. Is that
Did you know that the Vikings actually, I mean, we're not talking about marketing here at all. We got way off topic, but never mind. For everyone, this is the Quicc Games live stream / history channel. National Geographic, eat your heart out. But did you know that before, I think it was 1492, when Columbus sailed for
we call
America?
the ocean blue? Yes.
Yep, exactly. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. But before that, a good couple hundred years before that, in fact, the Vikings actually have been found to have reached and settled the state of New York.
Yes.
And they found that through satellite imagery, which I
Yeah,
thought
I
was
think
very
that
interesting.
was Leif Erikson, I believe,
I have
is
no idea.
the Viking. I think that's the Viking name we're familiar with in here in America that came over before Columbus. Yes.
See, we
Yes.
have gone way off topic.
Yes, I digress, but let's get back on topic, I guess.
Anyone who wants to know anything about history, please put it in the comments and we'll try our best to answer. And if not, we will Google it later.
Yes. I actually, that's something I don't always, I guess, talk about. I definitely am a history buff, and even learning a lot more with everything that's happened, with all the social injustice. These are things that weren't in the history books. That's been very eye opening as well, to learn some of the things that happen. Thank you, George, for
He's checked on
confirming that.
Wikipedia.
It's not fake
Yeah.
news.
No, not fake news. No, there's far too much of that apparently. But no, we're safe. So going back to topic slightly, a little bit, we kind of go steer the ship a little bit back to port. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yep.
Got George to keep us straight. He can drive the ship.
Okay. I'm not quite sure I would trust him. No.
I trust
I'm kidding.
George.
I do too. Funny enough, he's actually he's going to be joining us on a stream as well.
Nice.
So we're going to be talking to George as well. So we do like George. So I kind of almost want to ask, why or how did the topic of leaving the Marines come about, and when that happened? Can you tell a story about how you shifted into the marketing world?
Yeah, it wasn't an immediate thing. So was just at a little over 20 years as an officer, lieutenant colonel, and was coming up at a time when I was going to be, up for promotion for the next rank. But at the time where my kids were in school and in life, I really didn't want to move the family again. And so basically, I actually helped start the Marine Special Operations Command. I was the first comptroller. I was in charge of all the money. I got handpicked to do that job. So we started the organization from scratch. And so I really had nothing in a sense to look forward to, right? That was probably the best job I was ever going to have. And I really didn't want to go like work in the Pentagon. So I was like, you know what, it's time to move on and, kind of move on to the next phase of life. So I started out doing uh, government, contracting type work, but I just my passion wasn't there for it, right? It's like, I didn't say, "Oh, when I grow up, I wanna be a government contracting officer," right? But that's one of the skill sets that I had developed. But I had been a business major, and I'd always had an interest in business. So I started doing government consulting, still just wasn't, finding my drive. And what's interesting is we find that people that retire from the military change jobs at least 3 times within the first 5 years that they after they leave, because I think it's kinda like I don't know if it's wanderlust, and, that's one of those things that people don't know about. And so, I I had always been a geek, right? I used to, like, be the neighbor, like, "Hey, can you install a new modem card in my computer? Uh, can you help me with this?" And so I had always enjoyed technology. In fact, I actually was a computer science major before I switched to business. When I saw that my fellow computer science majors were spending their whole weekend coding, it's like, now I'd rather go have a couple beers and, meet girls. So that made me change my major. Gotta be frank about that. And so, but I would start to run into these people at these networking events like, "Oh, I do social media for these people." And I start to, one of the things is I'm very analytical, and I'll look at things and I was like, "You're getting paid to do this? Well, I could learn how to do that." Because I'd been on Facebook, but I just had never like taking the next step of like creating a Facebook business page or anything like that. So I dove in and I started doing it before, kind of on a part-time basis, and then I just went full on into it in 2016 and never looked back. And I enjoy it because one of the things is I like helping people, which definitely people need help with marketing. Two, I like a challenge. And three, I like to continuously learn. And so, as you know, Dan, if you want to be in a field that you're having to continuously learn and change and be challenged, marketing, and I even say digital marketing, right? Because it's really more than just the social platforms, right? You got to be thinking about websites. You got to be thinking about email marketing. You've got to be thinking about, text message marketing. How is, virtual reality and augmented reality going to change things? Because people's behaviors are being changed by these platforms, you know? Like, I I think I have a TikTok account, I don't use it very often, but now you hear, like, it might get banned in the US, so, all these people that put all this time and energy into something like TikTok, now what do they do? The other thing I was able to do, because I used to be actually an adjunct professor at Webster University before I started my, business, 'cause I do have a master's of science and management, was I got to become a instructor in some small business centers in North Carolina. So I started to be able to teach this as well. And I think one of the things about teachers in general, that sometimes I think is helpful, if you actually have like that real world experience in what you're teaching, it just makes you that much more credible. And so I think, that's where I've been fortunate. I started teaching back in like 2016, 17, and I've been doing that ever since. I was doing in-person workshops, but now, uh, I'm fortunate enough, the schools liked me enough that I moved because this was in North Carolina. I moved to Atlanta. They're like, "Hey, will you teach online?" So I'm going to be teaching some upcoming courses starting next month. Doing some short 2-hour classes using Zoom, which of course, that's got its challenges. So that's one of the things I've been doing during this time is the shift, as I like to call it, is how do we become better virtual presenters? And I think that anyone that's serious about this has to really think about how can they become better. And there's lots of tools out there, lots of platforms. I mean, even something like StreamYard, which we're on here today, right? If you've got the paid version, you can actually record only. So if you want to use it as a way to record your presentations and then upload it to your favorite platform. So there's just all these things that are always changing that I think we have to be aware of, and we have to, and it kind of goes back to, I sent an email out Monday to my email list and it's kind of like, are you living on rented, is your digital marketing house on rented land? What happens if you get evicted, right? Because if we get kicked off of Facebook, is our business in trouble because we haven't built that way to connect with them? So I think those are those things that we need to be aware of, that all these platforms can change. We can get kicked off because we said something wrong, things of that nature. So those are some of those issues that I think that everyone needs to be aware of.
I mean, you mentioned earlier that you were in the Special Operations Command. Is that right?
Yes.
So you need to be very, very strategic, before you even thought about being tactical.
Right.
And I mean, was it Stanley McChrystal, a general? In
I
was
I
that
did
the
I did know him. He was at
right?
one of those. Yes. I sat within a few feet of him in several meetings, so yes.
Yeah. So I did actually read his book, which was called Team of Teams, and I mean, he talks very, very interestingly about the difference between strategy and tactics, and static and dynamic problems. And I take it you're fully aware of the difference between the two, clearly. Can you tell us a little bit about those two, and how you split strategies and tactics, especially in times like this? So, because a lot of
Right,
people, as we know, they knee jerk, they panic.
right,
They're not quite as methodical as they could be.
right.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I think as an example, right, and I kinda break it down into, like, what we call our 5-paragraph order format, right, which is, SMEAC, right? Situation, which if you and you can equate this a lot to like when people talk about the whole SMART goals thing. It's like, what is the problem that we're trying to solve, right? Our mission, what is our vision of where we plan to take, and that's really where you get into the strategy. The execution is really the tactics, right? How are we going to do it? Because tactics can change, right? And it's kind of like you can win the battle, but you might lose the war, right? So you could equate that as well. And then we think about the administration and the logistics. What are the resources that we're going to use? What are the people that we're going to tie into with? uh, that might help us, because that, I think that's the other challenge that businesses have in general, and I'm sure you see it even with Quick, right? You guys aren't can't be all things to all people. And I think too many times a business owner will think like, "Oh, well, I don't want to spend the money on this." Well, you need to actually look at things as an investment, right? Stop looking at things as a cost, but as an investment. And are you getting a return on investment? And then the final part, the C, is um, if you want to call it the command and control. How are we going to coordinate these efforts, whether if we're working alone or if we're working with a team? So we kind of start that cycle over. So I think a lot of times people get caught up in tactics, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna post a video, right? But why are you posting the video? What's the strategy behind it, right? If is your strategy why, it's kind of like why do you post what you post, right? Posting for the sake of posting does nothing, right? Uh, I like the whole idea of the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of what you post should be adding value, 20% of it maybe you're trying to sell your product because ultimately businesses are in business to make money. I mean, that's the bottom line. If you're not in business to make money, then you might be a nonprofit or maybe you shouldn't be in business. Because if because you're just going to continue to struggle. So I think a lot of times it's the hard problem is what is my strategy? Like even uh, Christian and I on our one of our interviews that'll be coming out on a future podcast episode of Launch Your Live, we talked to Stephanie Liu about live video strategist, right? So you may come to me because one of the things I have started to shift into as well as remote live stream production is and say, hey, I want to do a live video with, I'm going to interview this person or that person. Well, what is the strategy behind this? Are you trying to reach a certain audience? Is there certain things that you want done as part of this? Like, do you want audience interaction or do you not want audience? Those are going to determine the tools that we're going to use because that might be we're like, okay, we're going to use Zoom or, oh, well, do you have a Facebook page? No. Okay, so where are we going to host this live? Maybe we go use a platform like, ViewStub or SwapCard where we have this kind of this virtual event that has nothing to do with being on rented land as we spoke about earlier because we want to own that content. So that's where you start thinking at the strategy level or even as Simon Sinek says, what's your why, right? Why are you doing what you're doing? And I think sometimes people avoid that because it's like it really forces them to answer questions that they maybe don't want to answer. And I think so I think that's where the military forces you in your training, in your upbringing to have to face these facts, right? We got to have, and tactics change, right? If it doesn't work, we got to come up with a new tactic, but we still know what the strategy may still be ultimately the right way for us to move forward.
I mean, funny you should say that was just literally yesterday. I was speaking with a guy who I actually went into a kind of a coaching cohort group with a couple of years ago, and I haven't spoken to him for a while. And he reached out just yesterday afternoon and just how's things and how's it going, and and he he's a counselor. So he does a lot of counseling about relationships and deepening connection, um, and really kind of having deeper relationships with the people, with teams that you want to work closer with. And as soon as the pandemic hit, he saw his revenue just plummet because by many people they were seeing that as a nice have, and right, when during a lockdown, it was just critical, cut all like non-essential expenses, and his revenue got slashed with something like 80%. And it was heavy. But because he does counseling, one of the things that he did on the side, he didn't used to do very much of it at all. It's just he enjoys doing it because I think he's also a rabbi as well.
Mhm.
And it's, part of his duties is counseling couples. But one thing he's actually said yesterday was that he's seen an exponential increase in people coming to him for couples counseling because all these kind of like little waves that were below the surface pre-lockdown, when you could go out of the house and you could just like, go out with the friends or go out for a glass of wine or whatever, and just avoid these difficult conversations in home, they couldn't do that anymore. So he's been literally back to back on Zoom calls with relationships, tackling problems that had just been simmering below the surface, and lockdown forced them very much to the surface. So his revenue got replaced and some by couples counselling, which I thought both sad but also quite amusing in a different way.
Right. Well, right, because now people are home together all the time, so it's, they're
Yeah.
having to maybe sometimes face the elephant in the room, as we like to say sometimes, and, I've definitely heard that that's, a lot more counseling and things of that nature. But you also bring up an interesting point. I was on a Zoom call earlier today where we were having this conversation where even Zoom, right? People like saying they're getting zoomed out, but is it because it's the way people are using the platform? I love the fact that I would say I've used, yeah, we've all probably used Zoom more than we ever did before, but to be able to have kind of like we're having right now, this one-on-one conversation and see each other, right, is such a different dynamic than maybe being on a phone call. I still think kind of goes back to tactics, right? What is the purpose of this conversation? If it's a short conversation, phone, text message, email can be fine. In fact, sometimes that's where text message has risen. It's like if what you're saying could have been said in a text, why are you going to send someone an email? But that goes back to building that relationship. And, but with the Zoom, right, I do a lot of these work I'm doing with these folks, I'm doing it on a Zoom call because it allows it to screen share. It allows to, kind of get that instant feedback that people don't otherwise have the ability to do. I can see my friend Tim has jumped on, and we have a show actually a little bit later today. We're going to have Bree Anderson. We're going to be talking about SEO. And I think Dan, we have you scheduled as well to come on. I believe next month. We need to make
But we
sure we
need
get
to
that
line that
lined
one
up.
down. Yes.
Yes, yes. So that'll be
Very,
fun.
very well done. Smooth. I like it.
Yes, yes,
But we like Brie. Brie is
yes,
a good egg
yes,
for sure. She will be try not to blow your mind too much with data. I'm
yes.
always asking her questions because I mean she works obviously with the Quicc team as well.
Hmm.
But yeah, she's always on the receiving end of many, 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 many of my work requests.
Yes.
So apologies, Brie, but you are too good for your own good. I mean, funny for what you were saying about strategy. I mean, this live stream show that we're on right now, it's kind of multifaceted for us. So primarily, it's called Quick Gains because we want our audience to gain something from each episode, but we don't want it to be like a how-to weekly tactical kind of download of the latest thing you should be doing because everyone's doing that. Um, if you want to have that, just watch a 3-minute YouTube video. You don't have to watch a 30-minute live stream. I think what we want to do here is to really engage with people on a close level and to build the rapport, but to then also have the audience get to know people like you on a deeper level. But at the same time, realize that it's okay to go on a live stream and talk human to human. You don't have to go on a live stream and then just download, your latest page from Wikipedia. You don't have to do that. You can just get to know someone on a
Right.
deeper level in a room that's literally like you and me with a microphone, earphones and headphones, a webcam. I've got a Canon N50, but
Right.
yeah, same thing. It doesn't have to be complicated. And a lot of people I think struggle with that. A lot of people wouldn't do what we're doing right now because they're like, well, I have to teach something. I have to do this. I have to do that. I need to have perfect lighting. I have a perfect camera. And there's all these things that they think they need to do.
Well, and you hit on something, a very powerful, Dan. Christian and I were talking with Ifat Cohen, who's a top uh, person in the world of live streaming. And that's what she does, right? She interviews people and has conversations and brings the audience into the conversation. And the glorious house of gains. But you're so right, right? I'm amazed Right, and I think it's sometimes, right, it's kinda like when you go buy a car, you start to see that car everywhere. Um, because we're in the world of digital marketing, we feel like, "Oh, everybody has a live stream, but it's not. It's like it's a very small percentage of people and even of businesses that are doing this very thing. But even if a business owner, as an example, and it's something I always suggest. Like, look, even if you just could come on once a week or once a month, and if you're that scared of doing it live, record a short video. Just tell people, like, hi, this is Jim. This is glad that you're visiting our page. I said, and pin that to the top of your Facebook page. That letting people see your face, that as Brian Kramer, has actually, I think copyrighted, that human to human connection, the H2H is so important in today's world, right? People want to do business with people, not logos and brands. And, I think that's like with Quicc, right? We know you and Chrissy Buck was who I originally met before she moved on to do her own thing. But it's like we want to know the people at the companies we work with, like with Agora Pulse, right? I know Mike Alton, I've met Eric Schaefer and Deb Mitchell. They're all with them as well. And even with StreamYard, right? I've got to meet Gage in person, and so that just makes a big difference in how you look at a product, and that's what starts to build brand loyalty, right? It's is that connection and that I think that that's what people miss. I'm sure it's something that Bree will be talking about later. Uh, but I'm amazed at how many businesses don't have a website, right? Or even the ones that I work with, how little they have no strategy when it comes to social. Like they're like, well, I'm not getting a lot of engagement on my social. Well, they're not putting anything worth engaging on their social.
Yeah. I mean, how many times do you see people who, their entire social media feed is their latest offer or their latest deal saying, come and buy now. And you think, who are you?
Hmm.
What do you do? Why
Right.
should I trust you? Why should I like you? I don't even know you.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Or they connect with you on LinkedIn, and the first thing they do is pitch you.
Oh, God, don't get me started on that.
Just
I did an
stop. Just
entire,
stop.
yeah,
Right.
I did a whole 45-minute live stream about LinkedIn automation about 2 weeks ago. It was, dire. So I realize you've got another live stream to go to. So we have to wrap this up in about the next sort of 5-10 minutes. First, any questions that anyone has for Jim, feel free, stick them in the comments. And I'm sure he will either answer them right now or he'll answer them post live. So any questions, whack them in the comments. Keep them clean, George, please. But from your perspective, a few words of wisdom. What would you suggest people do right now as we're, some states are coming out of lockdown, some are going back in. Here in the UK, we're coming out of lockdown and kind of going back in. We're kind of in that kind of balancing zone at the moment of we're not quite sure what we're doing. What would be your suggestions to people right now for keeping your cool and just still getting through?
Well, it's gonna, you can't get so excited that you think that this is all gonna go away tomorrow, right? It may take, 6 months, it may take another year, and so you can't worry about it what it ends, but you have to think about what is my strategy going to be to continue my business forward no matter what happens? Because the things we're doing now should be laying the groundwork for what we wanna do on the other side. So, do you have an email list? Do you have a way to contact your customers, right? Have you if you haven't built that list, start building it now. Some of it can be as simple as making a phone call, making a social post, asking them to connect with you in that regards, giving permission, because you need to own your customers' data. You need to be able to connect with them outside of, social platforms. Second thing is, if you haven't started doing video, you need to start. It doesn't have to necessarily be recorded, or I should say live, but recorded, right? And Quick is a great tool in regards to being able to caption, because a lot of one thing people don't realize that 80% of people watch your video with the sound off. Now, what's nice, right? Even like, because I know we're on Facebook, now that they put captioning in, they can potentially be watching what we're saying. I don't know how accurate it is, right? Between your British accent and my, sometimes I'm told I have a Southern accent.
It's
Um,
not good.
but it's there, right? But captioning is important, and I think that's where a tool like Quicc is definitely an important thing. And let's see, George actually has a couple questions. Um,
Ooh,
what's
here
my
we go.
favorite thing about what you do? Um, I really love live streaming and hacking how to do better presenting. I've been doing all kinds of like stuff that I haven't necessarily rolled out yet. Like I've been playing with, using Prezi as a virtual cam, not only on StreamYard, but also on Zoom to become a better presenter. And I just think for me, it's like figuring out what can't we do with these tools. I was even playing with, if you're a Mac user, you can use Sidecar if you've got the right, age Mac and an iPad. And I actually dragged my whiteboard app from my Mac to my iPad, shared the screen on StreamYard. This wasn't a live one. This was you know, playing around. And I'm writing on my iPad and it's, showing on the screen as I'm writing on it. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I want to find a little bit better whiteboard program because I think that's thing, but that's really probably my favorite thing is really become live video, remote. I love remote producing. Yeah, Tim, I know you love the PC, but I'm sorry, you just don't know what you're missing until I used to have a PC. And I went over to the as some people would call it, the dark side of the force with Apple products, and, iOS 14, I've been playing with the betas on the iPad and the iPhone and love some of the new stuff that they've got coming out there as well, and, yeah, so yeah, I love playing around with live streaming, really enjoying the podcast that I'm doing with Christian because we're, like, really breaking down all those little areas of what you need to do for live streaming, right? And it makes us even think about, it's everything from, you know, pre-promotion to like, why are you live streaming? Because not everybody is going to want to live stream, right? And in some cases, it may not make sense, but even as an example, right? We forget that Google owns YouTube, so it's search engine number one and two. And like you said, how many times do you go to YouTube to search for something? Well, couldn't you as a business have a short video teaching somebody, right? And how many people are afraid, right? This would be my other big tip. Don't be afraid to give away your knowledge. That when you give away your knowledge and show people what you can do, sure, they can do it themselves, but there's going to be a big portion of us like, I really don't want to do this. I'm going to call Dan because Dan has shown me he knows what he's doing. And I think we have to stop thinking about, "Oh, I gotta hold all this to myself. It's my secrets." Because really, when you look at it, unless you're a scientist, it's not rocket science.
And there's nothing new, is there? Really?
Right,
There's very
right.
little new in this world.
Yep,
And I always say that businesses are there to help with implementation.
yep,
So, and then, like you say, a lot of people they could do it themselves. They don't want to, they can't, they haven't got the time, they don't have the confidence, whatever it may be. That's what your business is there to do. If your business is there just to give knowledge, you're basically a library. And good luck with that because you're not going to pay kind of high figures for what other people are giving away for free.
right.
Not going to happen. So we're getting to the time. I did say it was 45 minutes. I promised because I know you got another live stream to jump into. So I am a man of my word. Plus, I don't want a once a Marine, always a Marine hunting me down.
Well, my wife and I, I guess we'll say weather permitting, right, would definitely like to come out to, England and Ireland. It's on our list for it was going to be this year. Obviously, that didn't work out. Uh, so fingers crossed, 2021 or 2022 for sure.
Anytime, you're more than welcome. I will give you the tour of the actual England, not the one that people see. They come over here and they say, I went to all the great spots. I went to see the London Eye and I went to the Tower Bridge. And I'm like, my God, if someone else tells me that they did the sites, that's not the sites. That's the touristy thing. I'll show you the real UK.
That sounds awesome.
I'll do that. So thank you very much for joining. Everyone who's watching, if you're watching live or you're catching on a replay, give the video a like, stick your questions in the comments. I was about to say stick it for a second. Now I'm glad I finished that sentence. Stick your comments in the, questions in the comments. You gotta love live video, don't you? And either myself or Jim will get to them as soon as we see them. Jim, thank you very much. I won't do the quick fire question round purely because I forgot the questions. I don't want to do something like that, and you have to go. So thank you very much for joining. And
Thank you.
Parting word of wisdom? Just one word.
Get started.
That's 2 words. Close enough. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
And goodbye, everyone else.